Yeah, yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, so I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of them. Yeah.
Oh, I left the screen up here. I'm sorry. Hello, welcome to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. I am so happy to be sitting here with a special guest. Oh my gosh, I am so happy to be sitting here with someone who was, of course, a part of a match that I sponsored, my first match that I ever sponsored in New York for Battle Club Pros. Welcome to New York. He is the awesome opponent to Sir Wilkins of the Jobber Tears podcast, who was on the episode last week, and they had a killer match in New York. But aside from that, he's also a journalist and an amazing host of What Culture and their channel and all of their various things, including wrestling, video gaming, so many different things. He is Simon Miller. He is Mr. Y. Here's why. And he will give you an up or a down. Like either way, he is that dude. So, Simon, thank you for coming on HWP. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I know we tried to arrange this over the last week or so, so the fact we've got it down is very, very cool. And thank you very much for my nice introduction. I appreciate that. I'm all of those things and more. I'm not sure whether I'm a journalist, but I'll take it. I'll take it all the same. At least that's what the internet tells me.
Yeah, I think of you as a journalist because I remember the first time I saw you, I was in college and I was finding any way to sort of keep up with wrestling because, of course, you can't watch it because when you're in the throes of academia, you're trying to get that degree. So it's just like any way I could keep up with it on YouTube or any other way, I appreciated it. And then that's where I found you on What Culture. And I was like, you know what? I like him. He's cool. He's kind of funny. So, and then anytime there was anything important going on, it's like you were always, at the front of it. So I think of you as a journalist. But then on top of that, I was fascinated, with your journey as a wrestler too. Because I noticed, that you're a big gentleman. So I was just like, okay, so he's a wrestler too. That's cool. So I just had to get you on when I knew you were going against one of my friends. So since this is about you, I want to ask you, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
Oh man, that is a question. I mean, it was a long old while ago now. I mean, I was really young. I was like 5 or 6 years old. Like it was proper, formative years. And basically, I was just flicking through the television channels. Like over here in the UK, back then, there was only like 4 channels. That was it. There's like 4 major channels. And then Sky TV became a thing. And then all of a sudden, it was more like American cable television, basically. That was the idea. Now, I was very lucky in the sense that my dad worked in TV. Like, his job was television related. So his company bought him Sky TV because he had to, whatever he did. And it meant we had Sky TV, which at the time was like, oh my gosh, like, no one's meant to have Sky TV. So as a kid, I'm there and I'm going through all these channels like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And then I stumbled on, I don't know who he was fighting, but it was a Bret Hart match. And it was like love at first sight. I was just like, boom, what is this? And ever since then, well, I mean, there was like you said, there was a bit of a drop when I was in college, just because there's so much going on. But other than that, yeah, I've been hooked on wrestling ever since. I saw those pink and black tights and I saw the Hitman and I was like, I want to know more about this. And it just got bigger and bigger. Then the Attitude Era hit. And then, yeah, we were away. And I've never looked back, to the point. I mean, wrestling like threw up on me these days. I couldn't be more involved in wrestling if I tried.
Yeah, like Bret Hart is a pretty solid place to start. Like a lot of people argue that he is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, also along with his family, of course, and their storied history as well. Like they are basically wrestling in Canada. So I'm really happy that you got, your start with him because that's a really solid place to start. Like for
Yeah.
me, yeah, for me it
That's
was WCW stuff. So yeah, what were you about to say?
No, I love that. If you mentioned WCW, I'll talk about WCW. So, so like that's when I got properly obsessed with it because I was a WWF guy, and then one day, again flicking through the channels, again this is years later. Yeah, we all stumbled across WCW. Like, there's another one, and then I remember over here, Nitro and Raw used to air on Friday nights, so it'd be Monday night in America, and there would be a 5-day delay. So Friday night,
Oh.
you'd all go around each other's houses, you get a pizza, and then you had to stick with WWF. But when the commercials came, you went over to WCW. I used to love that. I used to love going back and forth. It was just a great time to be a fan.
Yeah, that's what my dad did because I got into it through him, and he would flip the channels back and forth and tape them because he would have to go to work some nights. So
Yeah.
he would tape them, and then he had like a mountain of videotapes, like how Raw 30 happened, and they had all of those videotapes at the beginning. Like I was like, Dad, look, it's our past on television right now. It's crazy.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
it
love
was
it.
really fun.
No, I think stuff like that's awesome. Wrestling does have this proponent to just draw you in even years later when you look back on it. That's why that Raw 30 show was so cool, because it was like a big just a big nostalgia jump, and it reminded you of I always think the best time to get into wrestling is the first time you get into wrestling, because it feels so fresh and brand new and exciting, and then you kind of realize it's variations, but it's still, yeah, I think it's the best thing on the planet.
It is, it really is. And so because you felt that it was the best thing on the planet, like what made you realize that you wanted to be a part of it or participate in it or talk about it or do it as a wrestler or even as, a host now?
Yeah, so I always had it in the back of my head that I was going to try and become a wrestler. And actually, before I finally sort of made it, if that's the right term, or at least got through to having matches, I tried 2 or 3 times, and I didn't have the mental strength, I suppose, to see it through, because wrestling's really hard. So that was kind of always happening in the background. But I got into YouTube about 2009. So like before YouTube was a thing, like, nobody had really made their mark on YouTube. And I did a lot of it with video games. I just like video games, so that the opportunity came up. So I did it in video games for years, and then after a while, I was like, well, I love video games, but man, I really love wrestling. So, I wonder if I'd be able to do kind of merge these two things together. So I kind of had all these videos that I've made about video games, and then one day I saw a tweet from WhatCulture saying they were trying to hire for video guys, and because I had all this content, I just sent it to them. I said, look, here's me. I can do wrestling stuff as well. I think I'd love to be given the opportunity. And I mean, they must have at least liked it a little bit, I suppose. And I got my foot in the door. And from there, it was just work as hard as I possibly could. So that's what I did. I said yes to everything. I did video, I did video, I did video. And I think when I started, I was always watching wrestling in the background anyway. But when I started doing the videos and I was really involved, like, on a day-to-day basis, because it was my job, that was it. And it was like, right, this is the time, and I want to try and make it. I just want to get involved in it as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's like when you think you want to try something and then you almost feel, well, maybe I shouldn't, due to like some insecurity that you might feel inside. You're just kind of like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do it now, or maybe it's not the right time, or maybe I'm not meant for this thing. I've been there before in my own life, but it's just sometimes, when something calls you, it just seems like it just calls you. And it's funny you bring up video games because of the fact that video games are kind of the gateway to a lot of people either getting into wrestling or it sort of sparks something within them. Sometimes it's video games, sometimes it's other forms of media like documentaries. Like I've had certain wrestlers come on and talk about that. But you had your content and you were building it up. And then it was a gateway for you to talk about wrestling, even though you weren't exactly sure. You still pushed for it and did it anyway, because sometimes that's just what it takes. You have to have courage and bet on yourself. So I wasn't sure when I started my podcast either, but I just said, you know what, let's just try and let's just see where it goes. And that's just all you have to do. And then life might surprise you in that way. So that's really cool. So how did your family feel about you sort of pursuing this quasi media career in wrestling and then starting your wrestling career? Because you did mention that your dad worked in television before.
Yeah. So I mean, they didn't really understand what I was doing beforehand with the video game stuff. They're like, we don't get. Of course they don't, because they're a different generation. Like, video games to them are just, you know, I don't even know what they think video games are. So they were already a bit confused. And then, when I kind of said that I was going to jump across to wrestling, I don't think they understood how that could be a viable living. And then when I actually said, oh, now I'm going to become a wrestler, I think they're still baffled. Like, I think that, like, obviously, we had the Battle Club Pro show this weekend against Sir Wilkins. Welcome to New York. And, when I told them, oh yeah, I'm being flown out to America to wrestle, they just look at me like, what? I don't understand. I think it's not, they're very supportive, but they just don't get it. They just don't understand how that can be a thing. But I think that's great, because it's a little niche that maybe I've carved for myself. So, I mean, my dad was never the biggest wrestling fan. He used to kind of stick his head around when I used to watch it as a kid, and he was all like, I don't understand what any of this is. My mum still calls wrestling WWF because she thinks that's what it's called.
Oh.
Like, she doesn't, but that's all her know. That her frame of reference was me watching World Wrestling Federation when I was a kid. So she doesn't call it wrestling, she calls it WWF. But I think they see that it makes me happy, and I think they see that I have a lot of passion for it. And that's, I've got a roof over my head. I'm not, it's not like I'm doing it and running myself into the ground. And I think that's all they really care about. Yeah, but I do remember when I had the conversation with WhatCulture, and I said, look, a wrestling school has literally opened up down the road from me. I've wanted to do this for ages. I've tried, I failed. I'm doing it. If you want to document it, we'll document it. And they agreed. I remember my dad sort of finding out about that and being like, I don't understand what's happening anymore. you've got off the rails. But I think now that these opportunities do come up, I think they get it a little bit more, but I don't think they'll ever truly understand. But that's okay. That's all right. We all have our individual flavors, and we just got to do the best we can with them.
Yeah, I completely understand that, because it's like I remember my mom and I had a discussion about me starting a podcast, and she was just like, "Okay, I'm not sure what a podcast is." I kind of had to explain to my parents, what it basically was, and my sister too. She's younger, but once I explained, they were just like, "Okay, fine," And then once they started seeing, all the stuff that I was getting into, the more the world started opening up because the pandemic happened and stuff. It was just like, "Oh, okay." And my mom, even though she never really watched wrestling, but she watched it, by osmosis because my dad was there, and we were watching it together. She sort of left that to me and him because that was a bonding thing for us.
Yeah,
But she knows people because she's been with my dad forever, and then my grandma watched wrestling too. So it's just like she knows that it makes me happy, and even whenever I talk to her about certain things that's going on in wrestling, she'll listen now because she knows it's something that makes me happy. She might not be into it, but she'll ask about it because I'm clearly passionate about it and she knows that it makes me happy. And my
yeah,
dad, like, he's just over the moon about it because he's just like, okay, are you going to talk about this? What are you going to put together on this show? Or, are you going to have an episode? Are you taking a break now? Like, and I'll just be like, yeah, I'm doing this and we're talking about this. And then I also work with women's wrestling talk as well. So we center on just women's wrestling, and that's a really cool thing to be a part of as well. So it's just like every day I have something that I'm doing in wrestling, and they're just like, wow, okay, you know, they're just okay with it. And then my other family members all over the country, because we stay everywhere. I'm in Alabama though, that's where we're based. They're just like, man, this is crazy. Are you managing the wrestlers? Are you gonna be on TV one day? Like, what's going on? And I have to explain to them that it's like a step-by-step thing. So it's really funny how my family is just catching wind of it little by little, and they're just like, man, this is insane. So I totally get the idea of family sort of being like, oh, what's that? Or I don't get it, but you're happy, so it's okay.
Right? And that's all it comes down to. I don't even think they'll ever come to a match. I just don't think they will. I don't think it's their thing. But they see me running around, they see me having all these opportunities, they see how excited it gets me, and they're like, all right, you keep doing your thing, and you can tell us about it here, there, and everywhere. I mean, the best part is my dad. I mean, I don't want to break, the magic wall too much. I post pictures and he freaks out every time. He's like, "Well, what happened here?" I'm like, "It's wrestling, Dad. You have to remember what wrestling is. It's a work. It's a work." Bless him. Bless his heart.
That is so sweet. Because I know my dad was there the first time I called a match, because 'cause I'm also a commentator.
Excellent.
So, yeah, we have, in Alabama, we have an all-female division called the Belladonna division, and the first time I commentated, he was there, and it was such a big deal because I had never been, behind the scenes like that before, and just having to take care of the wrestlers and learning how to do that, was really cool, and so having him there, who was at the beginning of my wrestling journey as a fan, just meant the world to me. So, and then my boyfriend's in on it too, because he's a fan too. So that's just really fun.
That's
But
excellent.
yeah. Huh?
You've ticked all the boxes. It's all there. It all ties in.
It really does. It really does. So when you were training for wrestling, like how were you balancing your career with what culture and also being a wrestler at the same time? And did you have any obstacles that you have to overcome with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem's not the right word because I like it, but it's a balancing act. Yeah, even today, we go out to New York, but the videos have still got to be made. YouTube is a beast. You need to feed YouTube every single day. So yeah, it can be really, really difficult. Like, for example, this weekend it's the Royal Rumble, pumped for the Royal Rumble, excited for the Royal Rumble, but I've got a
Yes.
show the next day, and given the
Ooh.
start time, at the moment, I don't know how I'm going to make it because I've got to watch the Royal Rumble, I got to make the video, I've got to upload the video, and then I've got to drive like 4 hours up the road to try and make the show in time. But you always find a way, and I quite like that. I like the madness of it. I like the craziness. But yeah, it is a really tough balancing act. Like when I was training, it wasn't so bad because you train twice, 3 times a week, but we were also recording content that we were putting on the YouTube channel. So it was almost like it was my job, quote unquote. But when I started having matches and the two kind of diverted from one another, because I can't keep talking about my wrestling or WhatCulture. After a while, it's like, yeah, all right, you've done it. Like you don't get other people going on talking about their hobbies. When it did sort of split off in different directions, yeah, no, definitely there's a lot of thinking that goes into it. There's a lack of sleep that goes into it. But as I
Yes.
always say to everybody, if you had told me when I was 13 years old, in 20 years, you're going to be part wrestler, part wrestling commentator, part wrestling journalist, and you're going to be being paid for all these things, and it's actually going to be your job, I wouldn't have complained about that. I would have said, none of that makes any sense. I don't understand how that's going to be a thing. So I always make sure that I, uh, keep my feet on the ground and I remind myself this is a really cool position to be in. And even though I have worked really hard for it, everybody works hard for stuff. And there's been a lot of luck and a lot of fortune and a lot of people helping me out too. So yeah, even when it gets tough and even when there's no sleep, it's I genuinely feel privileged to be doing what I'm doing. But yeah, as I say to everybody, it's hard enough being a YouTuber. As fun as it is because you have to make so many videos. So when you add something like wrestling on top, which is also just this beast, when it comes to how much time it takes, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. However, there's plenty of time to rest in 20, 30, 40 years, right? We'll get there and then we can rest. So for now, I'm just going to enjoy it and have as much fun as possible. And so far, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, like it sounds like you have a pretty good balance of it, even of course there's the bumps that do come with it, like the no sleep, I totally get that. And the scheduling part, because even with the Royal Rumble for me, like it's Saturday, but then on top of that, because I host an after show with Women's Wrestling Talk for WoW Superheroes, on this side of, where I live in Alabama, it comes on at 6 p.m. And that's usually when Royal Rumble coverage kind of starts with their pre-show, but then that's before the show. So since WoW is only 1 hour, I have to watch WoW and then turn over to Royal Rumble and then do an after show with Women's Wrestling Talk for
A
the
lot,
Royal
right?
Rumble. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you spend all these hours, consuming this content that you love. and then talk about it. And then afterward, you get to rest and chill a little bit. Thankfully, I'm glad that their pay-per-views are on, well, they're premium live events, but whatever. I'm old. Um, I'm just 29, but either way, they're like on Saturdays now, and then you can spend the rest of Sunday and then you just sleep. But the rest of that, can be a little bit hard when you sit down and realize you've spent all these hours doing this and also working on content too. And then you're working on content for your own show too. But you learn how to balance it out. You have to have a work-life balance. Otherwise, you wind up spending your whole life in your room or your whole life in a studio.
Yeah, that sounds about
And
right. Yeah.
yeah, but if you love what you do, you make time for it. And then if you love the people around you, you make time for them as well. So it's good that you were able to do that. So what would you say is the best lesson that you learned while you were training? And who exactly did you train with, and what, school did you train with in the UK?
Well, I was trained by the one and only Al Snow, which is
Ooh.
always, yeah. So Al Snow literally, they still exist today. It's just Al Snow doesn't teach there directly anymore, just because he's too busy. But he has people that he's employed who are very, very good, because I've trained with them too. Yeah, but Al Snow opened up a bunch of wrestling academies in the UK back in 2016. And yeah, literally one was like 25 minutes from my house. And I was thinking of going anyway. And I was willing to drive or travel, whatever it took. But when one was that close to me, I remember saying to myself, well, if you don't do it now, it's all on you. Do you know what I mean? You let yourself down. If you don't do it, you can just drive down the road. So yeah, Al Snow trained me. And honestly, without Al Snow, I would never have made it. Like, I was not naturally gifted at this. I was not a Kurt Angle. It took like flip bumps. I've still got a scar on my head where I just kept scalping my own head trying to do flip bumps. I was just so bad at it. And then, I had some time with Al Snow, and honestly, within about 8 minutes, I was doing flip bumps, because he's just the man and he just gets it. And, that was 7 years ago, 16, yes, whatever, 7 years ago. And he still checks in and he still wants to know how you're getting on, and he still encourages you. So I couldn't have had a better trainer. Like, everything you saw on Tough Enough is real. There's no production value there. That's just Al Snow being a damn good wrestling trainer, and I can see why they chose him for that. So yeah, that was it. Honestly, was the best training I could have got, because he understands the fundamentals, he understands the basics, he understands the emotional side. Obviously, he's got his gimmick and his character, so he understands that too. He understands promos. It's just a one-stop shop. So I do feel really blessed that that did fall into my lap, and the fact that it was the same year I joined WhatCulture. It almost feels a little bit like it was, a marriage, just a marriage of convenience. And it was just in 2016, the world saying, Simon, now here we go. Now here is the time. And it probably did feel even sweeter, for lack of a better term, because I had tried twice before, and I just don't think I was mentally strong enough to make it through, because again, wrestling is so tough. So this time, the fact that I was able to do it, and I used my life experience to make sure that I made it through. And I had, because originally my main goal was just have one match, and that way, when you're a 90-year-old man, you can look back and you go, well, we had one match, right? We don't have to worry about it. But it was such a fun experience. I was like, nah, screw that. Let's do all the matches. And then by 2019, because I debuted in 2018, I had matches across the country, and I had a match in South Korea, and then it was just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And once you get that momentum, and once you start to find yourself getting more confident in the ring, I know everybody says this, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like drugs. Like, it's like drugs. You get home on a Sunday and you're like, right, we've got 5 days to the next one. We'll just make it through to that and we'll go again. So yeah, truly, I really do think wrestling is one of the greatest things in the world, in terms of just giving you something to hold on to, and sort of, throwing yourself into as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a heck of a teacher. Al Snow?
Oh, man,
Oh
is
my God.
it?
Like, that is insane, and I'm glad that you learned, various lessons from him that you kind of carry, to this day into your career and stuff. Like, that is amazing. And it's so funny you brought up Tough Enough. I remember as a girl being kind of scared for them. Like, watching that show was just like, oh my God, it looks so intense. Like, I don't think I could do it, because it looked almost about as intense as the military, or
Yeah,
what I would imagine the military's like.
yeah, no, it's very similar. I remember on my first training session, and
Mhm.
I appreciate the fact they did this, because it helped so much. But they pushed us so hard. I remember during the warm-up drill, which is the most ridiculous name, it was not a warm-up. I remember just saying to myself, just leave, just run out the door and never come back. They'll think you're mad, but that doesn't matter because they'll never see you again. No, I didn't do that, and I made sure I stayed there. But yeah, I tell everybody this: the first few weeks of wrestling training are not fun, and they're going to push you, and it's going to be hard, and the bumps suck. But then all of a sudden, everything clicks, and all of a sudden, you do something like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that." And then it just becomes a roller coaster ride. So yeah, you do have to put in the time, you have to put in the dedication, you have to be ready. But there's so many good schools these days. You know, if you dedicate yourself to it, you can come out the other side a pretty damn good wrestler, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. So, since I've gotten older and noticed, the various fandoms and been exposed to various fandoms and how fans act with the crowds and everything, depending on where wrestling goes in the WWE and other places and other promotions as well, I've noticed that in the UK, you guys have some of the most passionate and most loud fans I've ever seen in my life, and I love it. Like, I remember I was watching the UK tournament that they did in WWE for the first ever United Kingdom champion. And I just remember just hearing all of these chants and all of the singing and stuff like that. And I was just like, they are amazing. Like, this is the type of energy that I wish I could experience at any point in my life, whenever. So, did you ever have the chance to attend a wrestling show in the UK, as you were growing up, or even now as an adult? And what is that like to be a part of? Like, it looks amazing and fun.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. I attended all the WWE events. So they used to have the UK pay-per-views, Insurrection, Rebellion. I went to them, and then Raw and SmackDown would come over twice a year, and we used to go to them. And you did get the crowd was raucous, like they were loud and they were passionate, but it kind of all shifted to get really crazy during the period you were just talking about, like the NXT UK stuff. I just think in 2016 there was a boom period for independent British wrestling, and more people started getting into it. And there was almost like a football or a soccer vibe, I should say, and that sort of shifted across too. And all of a sudden, every crowd you worked in front of was just mad. They were just crazy. Like I remember after that show, I went out on the streets, and people were just the energy was crazy. Like everyone was just so pumped up to have witnessed it. And I think it probably just ties into British culture because, again, yeah, you go to a soccer game and it's a similar kind of thing. It's very tribalistic. It's very, we're going to chant this, we're going to do that. And when you have an environment like wrestling, which actively encourages that, they want you to chant, they want you to boo, they want you to cheer. I think British fans just take it to the next level. And of course, the chants they used to do for Bailey when she would come over, all the singing and everything like that. And we'd pick our favorites, and you'd have commentators going, "Oh, it's Bizarro world here in the UK because we boo the good guys, we cheer the bad guys." I just think it was something that almost became affiliated with the UK, and then kind of moved across to other parts of the world. But I think that's just a UK audience. So they buy in, and they buy in as much as they possibly can. Now, sometimes it goes bad because some people get very, very drunk and they take it way too far. But by and large, it was the same at Clash at the Castle back in September. Even though that was in a stadium and it's very family friendly and
Yes.
62,000, you watch that back and they're just so loud. They're just so happy that wrestling has come to the country, which is probably why Money in the Bank is happening in the O2 in London this year, because they, WWE want to say, listen, right? And it's just our nature. But what a fabulous nature it is, especially when it comes to wrestling. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I remember when they announced that Money in the Bank was going to London. I was so happy for y'all. I was just like, oh my God, that's so good. I was just like, that's so great that they get to do that. I bet, it'll be lit. Because I mean, last year's was pretty lit. But the thing is, though, when it's going to be over there, I just know that it's going to be amazing. Not only just because of the action, but because of y'all's reaction to the action. Like, I cannot wait to see that. And Clash at the Castle was probably one of the best pay-per-views I'd ever seen or had the privilege to watch, because it's just like all of us are so excited, and WWE made it a big deal because it was really the first big event that was going to be like in an arena at that time in over 20 years. So I was just like, man, this is going to be huge, and I just wasn't expecting all of the craziness to come with it, but y'all seem really excited, and I just love that for y'all, that y'all are able to have that, and then have Money in the Bank afterward too. Like, oh my God, like it's going to be really amazing. Were you at Clash at the Castle?
Oh yeah, we were there. We'll be at Money in the Bank as well. Like, I think going to those live shows is really important. because it reminds that's what wrestling is, right? That's wrestling, that kind of live experience. And I say it to everyone: you can, be the most, you can be ardently against wrestling and think it's crap and I don't like it. And if you take them to a live show, within 10 minutes, they're like, man, this is fun, isn't it? This is absolutely brilliant. Like, it does something to you. So I think that's why why we're getting Money in the Bank. And I presume come 2024, we'll get a show a year. I would presume. And hopefully that then starts happening for other countries in the world as well, because, it's a global thing. And it would be really cool just to have the odd show here, there, and everywhere and spread the love, I think.
Yeah, like I'm really like there are lots of people who will come to shows and then they'll have different signs for different pay-per-views that they're pushing for. And I feel like maybe, just maybe within the next 5 years or 10 years, y'all might have a WrestleMania and it'll be great.
It could happen, right? You got Wembley, we've got some other stadiums, New Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you could do it there. I think there's more chance of it happening now than there ever has been. And a WrestleMania outside of the United States or outside of North America seems crazy. But yeah, especially with the company being up for sale, I think, they're going to want to sort of, again, globalize it even more than they already have done. So I think you're right. I think within 10 years, we'll get a UK WrestleMania in London. And then I'm going to do a dance because that's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, or maybe you'll be in it.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. Believe. Always believe.
Yes, maybe you'll be in it and then we'll have to fly. Really?
Come over, yeah.
Yeah, really the only time I've been to the UK was when I went to Ghana for study abroad and we stopped there at the airport and that was it.
We'd have to come back. You'd have to come back and do it properly for a WrestleMania. That sounds pretty good.
Yes, and it was just so beautiful hearing everyone's accents and everything. I was just like, "Oh my God, this is real." Because you only ever hear it on television in the United States. So when you're actually in the presence of British people and you hear them speak, you're just like, "Oh, it's amazing." It's weird, but it's amazing at the same time. So it's really cool. So what are some of your hobbies outside of wrestling and outside of, streaming and doing certain stuff like that?
Well, I do like going to the gym. Let's not pretend otherwise. Fitness, bodybuilding, weightlifting, whatever we're calling it nowadays. I am really I love that as well. I'm very, very lucky in the sense I actually enjoy doing all of that. So given that it does marry up with the wrestling well, it's not the end of the world. There could be worse things. So yeah, I spend a lot of my time doing that because that's kind of where I find my peace, right? That's my safe space. Go to the gym, you switch off for a couple of hours, you haven't got to worry about anything, and then you feel pretty good afterwards. But outside of that, I'm a big into music. I got a band, over here as well. Shout out to MG and the Juggernaut. So we don't play as many gigs as we used to, just because we're all getting old. But it still exists, and we still do play gigs here and there. And we get together and we make music, and I love doing that. And otherwise, it's just there's not much time for anything else. I can't lie. It's kind of packed with all the above. So it's just what everybody else likes doing. I like, I'm big into movies and TV shows. I don't watch as many TV shows as I'd like. I'm kind of a Netflix hound or an Amazon Prime hound, but it's just trying to find the time is hard. But I love doing that. And just recently, I got a Kindle, so I finally got back into reading, which is kind of sad because all I've done so far is read wrestling books. And once again, I'm like, what am I doing? Why? But there's so many wrestling books I wanted to read, but I will branch out from that as well. And I suppose the only other thing that I'm doing is, I got into acting as well over the last year. Like during the pandemic over here, we weren't allowed to do anything. Like everything was locked down, and we couldn't wrestle. And I just needed a creative output. So I'd always said to myself, well, maybe one day I'll try acting. So given that there were all these online Zoom courses, I started to do those and I really enjoyed it. And then the world opened up again. So I started going to acting school. And yeah, I've been doing that too. And it's really cool because not only do I enjoy it on its own merit, but it helps with wrestling. It helped with my promos. It helped me with a sort of how to inject a certain emotion into promos and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my my circle at the moment. But it's good. I kind of feel like every day I get to be a little bit creative. And that's what I want. I just need to get whatever that weird thing inside of me, I just need to get it out there. And thankfully, I'm very blessed to have a load of avenues to do this.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's funny you mentioned TV because I feel like outside of wrestling, I really don't watch a lot of television. Like, I feel like I'm always on Netflix watching my comfort shows that I've watched a billion times already, but yet and still I still watch it, even though I know what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah. I
Or
spent the entire flight to New York watching Seinfeld.
Oh.
I watched Seinfeld like 1,000 times. I watched some more Seinfeld. A comfort show.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am with Girlfriends now. Like, I will rewatch that 1,000 times. I watched it during the pandemic and I'm still watching it even now. I was watching it last night when I was doing my hair. So it's just kind of like, that's just my comfort thing. Like, that's my thing that I do to just calm down for the day.
Yeah,
Or I
exactly.
just spend time on TikTok, or sometimes, I just interact with that and it's just really fun. But I do wish I made time to watch Abbott Elementary because that's a really good show. That's all the rage here in the US for this, at this point. But I just don't make time for it. And I'm just like, I want to support it, but I just never dedicate myself to really watch it. And I'm just like, dang, maybe I should just wait till all the seasons come on and then I'll just watch it all in just one sitting. Maybe that's
The
it.
way to do it, yeah. Binge it. Binge the hell out of it. I haven't heard of that. I'll check. Was it Abbott City? I'll check that out as well.
No, it's Abbott Elementary.
Abbott
It's
Elementary, right? I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a comedy that's sort of like The Office, except it's centered on an elementary school in Philadelphia.
That sounds good. I will watch that. All right, done. Sign me up.
Yeah, it's really funny. I just haven't made time to watch the rest of the episodes, but it's really funny.
All right, I'm in. Sorted.
Yes, definitely. So, I love how you mentioned books too, because I buy books but don't finish them. That's a problem.
I think that's why I bought the Kindle. Well, actually, it was a present, but it's so much easier when they're all just stored on a device. Then you haven't got to worry about it. And now I am basically going through books that people bought me ages ago that I never read, and now I'm reading them digitally, which is kind of ridiculous, but this is what I've chosen to do.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Like, I always valued books growing up because my mom valued books. Like, she had me reading novels, like, in the 3rd grade. So it's just
Uh,
like reading was never an issue for me until I got to college, and then you had to do it, and then I think after that, I just kinda got burnt out, but
oh, yeah.
there were still books that I was interested in, so I would still purchase them, but I would never finish 'em. My life is so distracting, it's crazy.
I
But,
get it.
I feel better about the fact that I at least have a library. So, it's cool. It's
They're
cool.
there. They're there for you to finish whenever you choose fit. I think nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And we were library heads too, because we were always there and then we would read it at a certain time and return it. And I hated that too. So that's why I started buying them.
Yeah, you don't want an expiration date on the book. That's the problem with the library. You're like, oh man, I've only got 2 more days. You're trying to get through it. I can't. I haven't got enough time.
It makes me sad. It used to just make me sad. You grow attached to it and then you have to return it. Like, no.
I agree, but there is something about a book. I don't know what it is. It's not the same on a Kindle. When you actually have a book, there is something, yeah, cool about it. It's weird.
Yeah, and then I'm afraid that one day we'll get to a point to where books won't exist anymore. Like, I'm scared.
I get it. It happened with music pretty much, right? No one has CDs anymore. It's all digital and stuff. And it happened with DVDs, Blu-rays, they're kind of gone. It probably will happen with books. We are heading in that direction. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, like, I'm scared to go into the electronic section and there's no DVDs and no Blu-rays and no books. Like, that would just scare me. Like, I would cry. Like, no.
Well, in 10 years, I think it can happen. Sooner, maybe. Maybe it's happening right now.
Oh my god, maybe so. But back to but back to you, in your wrestling life. How would you say you feel about the state of wrestling in terms of, where it is now? Like, what's good about it and what could be better about it in your opinion?
I think it's really good right now. Like, I think that Raw 30 show we had on Monday was a barrel of laughs. It wasn't perfect. There are issues, but I think the good stuff was really good. And the bad stuff, I think they can easily, learn from going forward. And I kind of think the WW, I think the reason there's so much anticipation for the Raw Rumble is because they have done a great job on SmackDown and Raw and whatever else they've got going on. It feels like something big is going to go down. Whether that's true or not, the fact that that's in the air, I really do think WWE's on a roll, and I think Triple H is a huge reason for that. And I believe if we get to WrestleMania with the same team intact, I think it's going to be a tremendous WrestleMania. I really do. I think it's going to be the best one in years. And I think it's kind of the same with AEW too. I think ever since we've come out into 2023, I think Dynamite is, I find it hard to criticize Dynamite in the sense that they tell me what their show is and they deliver that every single week. There's never anything I don't go, that's weird. No, it ties exactly into what the AEW mold's supposed to be. And I think Rampage is better as well. I know some people see Rampage as a throwaway show, but I actually think it's an opportunity to showcase more people. And I've enjoyed all the stuff that's been happening on that. And I know, it was better when you had the bigger stars like Moxley making their appearances, but no, wrestling to me feels like it's in a really big place. And when you actually kind of look at viewership, although it's down, when you compare it to other television shows, wrestling's always right at the top of those charts. So people do care and people are invested. So yeah, I think it's only going to continue in this fashion. It does depend what happens with this sale of WWE and how that's going to change things around. But as of the 25th of January, 2023, and actually it's the same for the smaller companies too. I think Impact is a terrific wrestling show. Like not many people check it
Yeah.
out. Many people I'm sure they would like to, but there's some great talent down there. And there's talent down there that could walk on to WWE or AEW tomorrow and they'd be totally fine. The Japanese scene, I think, is sort of finding its feet again after all the pandemic stuff. I don't get to watch much NWA, but I know some people are really into that too. So this is the greatest thing. No matter what you want, there is wrestling out there for you. And I remember when I was growing up, people would talk about AAA and CMLL. And I was like, what the hell is that? And now you can just go watch it. It's amazing. It's just there on the internet. You can check it out. So if you want to be into Mexican wrestling or lucha libre, yeah, you can go and do it. If you want to go to Japan, you can do it. If you want to come over here in Britain, everyone's got a streaming service. Progress, which is the biggest UK promotion, you can check them out no matter where you are for like $5 a month or whatever it is. And I think going on the other side, do I think there's too much content? Yes, in the sense you have to pick and choose, right? I know some people like to be completionists and they like to be 100%ers. You just can't do it. You have to pick and choose. So it is kind of, two ends of the same sword. However, I think the pros far outweigh the cons. And if we get through the Royal Rumble and it's as good as I think it's going to be, I think, yeah, as we roll into WrestleMania, if everybody keeps firing as they have been firing, it's going to be a good start to 2023. Don't know about the rest of the year, but in terms of starting, yeah, I think it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's really positive. So basically, you would say there's more ups than downs.
Oh man, well, I mean, you've seen the show. There's not a lot of downs. people, not you. I mean, people on the internet I still get internet tweets being, "Oh, Simon, you're too positive." Like, that's the show. That's the whole point of the show, is to look for the positive, and it just it goes right over their head. But that's okay. As I've always said, as long as people are messaging me and engaging me and watching, you can say whatever the hell you want. I don't care. Just watch the thing. That's the most important thing. But yeah, absolutely more ups and some golden ups in there as well.
Yeah, and it's so funny whenever I watch wrestling shows, because I watch WWE and AEW as well. It's just I see so many signs of people asking you to give them an up. And I wonder, does that overwhelm you? When did that start happening for you? And does that overwhelm you to know that people actually know you and want to shout you out on television?
Honestly, I don't even think overwhelmed is the right word. It blows my brain. Like because I think I always like to try and think these things through. So I think it's important, right? So somebody is going to a show and they buy their card, and they buy their pens, and their thought processes are, I shout out Simon, or I shout ups and downs. That is a lovely gesture. Like, it truly is. And never in my wildest dreams did I think anything like that was ever going to happen. So yeah, I do massively appreciate it. It just started happening naturally. Obviously, the first one was on a WWE show, just because AEW didn't exist till 2019. But it was about, I think it was 2018-ish, maybe 2017. And it was just on an episode of SmackDown. And somebody had a sign saying, "Simon, give me an up." And I remember I messaged the WhatCulture guys going, that's this, right? Because I was, I couldn't bring myself to actually believe that it would do. And I said, we got to mention it on the show. So we mentioned it on the show. And I suppose doing that mention was just like opening the floodgates. And then ever since then, people have been awesome. Like, there was one on one of the Crown Jewel shows in Saudi Arabia. Somebody had a Simon give me an up sign. I was like, in Saudi Arabia? Like, who's watching ups and downs in Saudi Arabia? But people are just people and humans are just humans. So what I think my happiest takeaway of it is, it means people get something from the show. Maybe they feel like we're buddies. Maybe they feel like we're all just down, the bar, the pub, whatever, having a chat. And that was always the idea. It's meant to be a fun, entertaining show where we're all buddies, we're all friends. We love wrestling. We love the wrestling community, and we'll just laugh about it for 20 minutes. So yeah, I think I do think it's the coolest part of the job. That and people coming up to you and telling you how much they like it. You wouldn't be able to replace it with anything. It truly is. It's lovely. It's wonderful. And I massively appreciate it. So thank you to anyone who has ever done that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because every time I see it, I'm like, oh, snap, Simon has a thing. There's a sign. There's a
Yeah,
sign for him. It's
yeah,
cool.
it is cool. It is really cool, and I love it. Every time I see it, I smile, and I think that's what life's all about, right?
Yeah, definitely. So this past weekend, um, this you had a match with Sir Wilkins of the Jobber Tears podcast at Welcome to New York, which we have addressed on this episode previously, and it was sponsored by my show, The Hardy Wrestling Podcast, because Sir Wilkins is a friend of mine that I was able to meet, and that I get to engage with online a whole lot with their show and their inspirations to me and my thing. So watching Sir Wilkins, chart his journey through his wrestling career and him having this match, was just amazing. And that's the reason why I had to sponsor it, because I was just like, I love Simon, I love you. So now we got to get this cracking. So, like, they have to have everything they need. So that's why I had to sponsor it. And I hate that we weren't able to meet in person because, like I said, that's in New York and I live in Alabama in the United States. And I'm trying to recover from Christmas and the holidays and stuff. But either way, I just had to throw my support in there. So, how did this rivalry from your perspective get started? And, like, what sort of led to it, and what was it about Wilkins that, led you guys to each other?
Well, I think it was, I think a lot of the credit has to go to Joe, who runs Battle Club Pro, because
Yes.
he told me the story. He was just walking to the bank one day, and all of a sudden his brain went, Simon Miller, online presence, bald. Sir Wilkins, a good friend of his too, bald, online presence. Why don't they have a wrestling match? Because he was training and I was training, and this was meant to happen in 2019, which kind of made a lot more sense because I'd only just got into it, and Sir Wilkins had already just got into it. It wasn't able to happen, obviously, because the stupid pandemic got in the way, and we had to delay everything. And then we tried again, and I was injured. And we tried again, and I was booked. But it's kind of cool because it meant it was 3 years in the making, in the end. And for it to be Sir Wilkins's first ever match, I said to him, man, I took a lot of pleasure in that, a lot of pride that we got to share that together. Even though he did screw me over and punch me right in the groin, we don't need to worry about that right now. I mean, that was pretty quite literally low of him. But yeah, that did make it so much cooler because Battle Club is an awesome promotion. There's a real family feel to it. Everyone is backing everybody else up. Everyone makes everyone feel at home, which isn't always the case in every promotion. And yeah, I just think it kind of sprung from there. Can we get two sort of online presences clashing together in the ring? And Joe even said to me, when he was on commentary and he saw it, he was just like, yes, there it is. There it is. There's my labor of love. And I felt the same. And the crowd was absolutely amazing. He's the hometown boy. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I got a lot of positive love. But I heard them. There's a couple of people giving me some downs in there because they're for the jobber tears, which is cool. That's what wrestling's all about, is by getting that reaction. And I think we could have stood there for 10 minutes and everybody would have, continued to cheer or boo or whatever. And that was ace. So I think it was just one of those things that made sense. It just needed a conduit to put it together. And Joe was like, I'll be that guy. I got a wrestling promotion. I think it would be cool. And it's also awesome for me because when I took my first bump in 2016, never, I dreamed and I hoped, but never did I actually think that I'd be flown overseas, especially to somewhere like New York City that I'm a big fan of. I love NYC, to do a wrestling match. And even if I retire tomorrow, nobody can take that away from me. And I think that is pretty cool. And yeah, like I say, I'm pleased I got to do it with Sir Wilkins. Because aside from being, aside from his dubious tactics that we will discuss down the line, I'm sure they've got to get some revenge. He's a good dude and he works hard. He's built up a fan base for himself. So it was great to get to see him do his thing. Yeah. So yeah, it was a real cool weekend and something I remember for a long time.
Yeah, that's the thing about Battle Club Pro and that community in New York. They are so welcoming. That's something that I was not expecting when I actually went to New York the first time. I went for Black Wrestle Fest in June of last year during Juneteenth weekend. And it was my first time in New York ever. But it was a dream come true for me as well. So when I went up there, everybody was so sweet and so welcoming to me and stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I felt like I found my people, even though I have people, everywhere because I'm just a friendly person. So it's just like when I went up there, I was just like, man, this is amazing. Everyone, was really helpful and really nice and stuff, and because they knew it was my first time, because New York is so big in comparison, to where I'm from, which is Birmingham. It's just kind of like, oh my God, this is crazy. But they were still helpful throughout the entire process. And Joe is an amazing manager, and I've had him on my show before. He is so great. Like, he makes sure, you'll have what you need. And he also surprises you too, because I'll never forget when he asked me to commentate at Welcome to War that weekend. I was like, excuse me? You want me to what? Are you sure? Like, of course I will, because I was doing a women in wrestling panel, and he just came up, during the question and answer section. He asked me, and I was like, oh my God, I would love to. And so doing that, for Battle Club was just amazing. And I'll never forget that too. So I'm glad you had that experience as well. Like, oh my God, it looked like it was a party.
It really was. And I think, I honestly, you mentioned it there. I think a large reason for that is Joe and the atmosphere that he brings and the ship that he runs and the way he wants to treat you and he wants to be treated, etc. It's wrestling, and there's a lot of promoters still out there that are looking to make their money and run away, whatever it may be. But Joe actually cares, and Joe actually wants this to succeed, and he wants to see his guys and his girls succeed too. And I think that only, positive vibes only bring back positive vibes, and he just puts them out there in droves. So yeah, massive shout out to him, and massive thank you to him as well for bringing me over there too. He didn't have to do that. That's a badass thing to do, and I massively appreciate it.
Yeah. So what was outside of fighting Sir Wilkins? Like, what was your favorite, experience, or any favorite person that you got to meet while you were in New York?
Oh man, that's it. Every single person, all the Fallout trainees, and every single person that was on that show was just, they were so damn kind, and they were so nice. And I got to hang out on the Sunday with a few of them and just, chat, wrestling and other stuff that, the sports, etc. And that's kind of my favorite thing as well, is just getting to meet people. But to go into a locker room where everybody is so forthcoming and everybody is so kind, that's the real stuff that matters, because that will then breed out across all of America and all of England if they come over here, because they'll bring those same vibes into locker rooms. But honestly, it was a full house, which is why I can't even reference even one person. Like, as soon as we got there on the Saturday, people were there with, open arms and wanting to chat. Just have a good time and treat wrestling as a form of entertainment, which is what it is, not only for the people coming, but for the people in the ring as well. And it was the same for the fans too. Like, we did a bit of a meet and greet, and people said super nice stuff. People had some signs, some people were wearing the merchandise, which always makes me go, how the hell has this happened? So, it was honestly just 3.5 days of, reminding yourself why you're so lucky to do what you do, and the fact that people care, because it's easy to forget that. It's still a job at the end of the day, and sometimes you can fall into that pattern, as we all do, 9 to 5, not 9 to 5. Job sometimes can just be job. But then when you actually get to talk to people, and they say, I liked it when you did this, or I like this video, or this video allows me to do this, like, okay, cool, thank you. You've now inspired and motivated me and reminded me why we should keep doing this. And that really did happen across the board. So that was awesome. Got to roll around on Sunday and see a little bit of New York. I was in Brooklyn, obviously, never seen Brooklyn. So that was ace. That was so cool, getting to see Brooklyn up close and personal. And you know the deal when you're in America, have some nice food, chat to some good people. As it's New York, I ate my weight in bagels. Man, do I love a bagel. So, I stocked up on bagels, and then I flew home Monday morning. I was like, yep, that's a good 72 hours.
That's so great. I'm glad you had that experience. Like, I love New York too, and I look forward to going back probably within the next few months, or if Joe has it his way, probably in 2 months.
Good, 70.
Yes, definitely. So, one question I do want to ask you is the trajectory of your wrestling career. Like, is it your goal to possibly sign with a mainstream promotion as you continue to grow as a wrestler in your career?
I mean, I think everybody would say that, right? I always look at it like this. Would you ever turn down that opportunity? No, you would not. As a life-changing, amazing opportunity. But I kind of approach it from a little bit of a different way, because my main goal is just to have fun, like, genuinely. And that sounds silly, but the pandemic reminded me that if you're not enjoying this stuff and you're too focused on the destination, it will pass you by. So now I make sure to enjoy every single show. I enjoy every single match. I enjoy the backstage stuff, the meet and greet stuff, whatever it may be. But of course, yeah, if we're talking about where we're hoping it's leading to, if I was even able to not even sign a contract, even if I was able to have a match, a cameo, an appearance, whatever it may be, someone can squash the hell out of me. That's fine. If you just associate with one of those companies for one day, you know, again, it's an experience that nobody can take away from you. But yeah, we're toiling away, and we're hoping that we have something to offer on a more mainstream and wider basis. But I take it every day as it comes. I take it every step as it comes. If it happens, man, I'll be ready and I'll be over the moon and I'll sign that thing. And if it doesn't, I'll continue to do these smaller shows, but I'll have a blast as well. But yeah, it's always in the back of your mind. Of course, I think it has to be, right? It's just the
Mhm.
nature of the beast, the dangling carrot. And if it does do it, I'll be the happiest man ever. And I'll do a backflip. And then and again, it's just a new adventure, right? It's a new journey. And we'll see what we can do from there. Maybe it goes well, maybe it's a short-term thing, but that's all right. You know, you take all of these things and you put it, you know, you put it away in your brain, and it usually leads to somewhere else as well. So fingers crossed, yes. But in the meantime, there's still so much more we can do.
Definitely. Like I know I would really lose my mind if I did see you on television in that way. I'd be like, "Oh my god, I saw that!" Like I would lose it. I would lose my entire like everything if that ever happened, and I'm more than sure that other people would feel the same way. So, I do look forward to it, if it does happen, but even if it doesn't, I mean, you've still created a life for yourself that you can be proud of. So that's
Oh,
really ultimately all that matters, with that.
I agree.
So, since I have you here and it is Royal Rumble season, who is your pick to win the Women's Royal Rumble and the Men's Royal Rumble?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and
Mhm.
I'm going to pretend there's loads of rumors on the internet, right? I'm going to
Yes.
throw them to one side for now. If there is a big star returning, do I think they will win the Royal Rumble? Yes. Yes, I do, because it makes sense. But let's forget about that, because we don't know. In terms of who I would like to see of the current crop, I think Rhea Ripley should win the Women's Royal Rumble, and I think she should go. I think she should switch brands, and I think she should beat Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania for the championship. I do. I really, really do think that. And then I would keep the title on Bianca Belair, and I would try and do some kind of mega SmackDown versus Raw championship match between those two, because they have history
Ooh.
and they're amazing. You know, I'd like to do something really big, because I just think both of them are stars for the future. Bianca Belair, she's already doing it, man. She's smashing it. Rhea Ripley's already doing it, but give her the belt so she can prove she can do it that way too. So yeah, I'm all in for Rhea Ripley this year. And on the men's side, I think it should be Cody Rhodes. I just do. I think Cody Rhodes coming back, big return. People forget he's not that old. He's only in his mid-30s. He loves this. He's got, a bee in his bonnet about being the champion. I think you can ride the Cody Rhodes train for another 10 years. I really, really do. I'm sure he wants to get into acting and stuff, but still, I would, I would pull the trigger on both of those. Again, big stars outside of it. And if we get to Cody versus Roman on that Sunday at WrestleMania, I am going to be desperate for Cody to win. Desperate. I would love that. I think that gives you a WrestleMania moment. I think that's a great way to end the Roman Reigns stuff. I would like it to be Sami Zayn, but I don't think they're going to. I think they have different plans for that, which is totally cool, because they've done such a great job with that bloodline storyline that I have complete trust in them. But yeah, they're the two that I'm going for, and they're the two I hope win as well. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
Yeah, like there's just so many ways they could go that it's almost hard to make a prediction, because if you make a prediction this way, then they could go this way. Or if you make a prediction this way, they could go this way. It's just really hard.
It
But you know who you would want to win, right? And the Cody train is really amazing and it's chugging along, because with these promos and stuff, like I remember when Raw a few weeks ago came to Birmingham, they showed him, getting his surgery at St. Vincent's Hospital at the Andrew Sports Medicine Clinic. Like that's where all the wrestlers go to get fixed. They come here. And it's just like when he was cutting that promo in the lobby of St. Vincent's like this past Monday, I lost it. That's the hospital I was born in. So
That's
I was
amazing.
just like,
Cool.
oh my God. Like I'm just ready for it. I'm ready for him to come back and do it, because that's what he said he wanted to do from the jump. So I want him to be able to do it, and to stake his claim. But I still low key feel like he has unfinished business with Seth too. So it's just kind of like, oh my God, where can they go? What
Title
is
in,
going to happen?
title in. I tell you, make him the champ. First feud, Seth Rollins. I'll be there front and center. I would love that. I hope they do it.
Yeah, me too. And then when it comes to Rhea, it's hard to tell with her too, because she likes to mix it up with the men now. And
That's
it's
true.
just like, girl, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to enter the men's rumble? Like, are you trying to like get to fighting with the dudes now? Like, have you completely abandoned the women's division because you're in Judgment Day, with these guys? And I feel like that's like a good like stepping off point in terms of equality, because we haven't really seen a woman really do anything like that, in a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it either way, but I'm really intrigued and I'm really glad I asked you that. So my last question Well, actually, I have two more questions. One question I have for you is, how did you come up with the phrasing of why here's why? Because that's something I gotta know. I gotta know. The people need to know.
All right. So when I joined WhatCulture, everybody had a thing. Everybody had a catchphrase. Everybody had a gimmick. Everybody had something. So I was like, okay, well, I need to have something too. You know, you got to make sure you keep up with the pack. So I don't know where it came from, but I just said, I sent a message to the boss of WhatCulture. I said, look, it'd be cool because he wanted ideas. You know, it was kind of a formative time, and I said, well, I like my own series. So how about I said we call it the Why series. And I said it right itself because you can do stuff like why John Cena is the greatest wrestler ever, or you can jump on new stuff like why WWE just fired this guy. Do you know what I mean? Like it served itself to both purposes. And they're like, yeah, that works. That's like easy, nice YouTube titles. So we signed off on it, and I started doing them, and then I realized that everybody else also had they all had catchphrase. They all did something at the start of videos. So I was like, okay, well, I better do something at the start of videos. So I just from nowhere, I just came up with the idea where you can say why, here's why, because you actually hear it on TV all the time. You actually listen to wrestling promos too. People are going to kick that guy's ass. Why? Because I'm going to kick his ass or whatever. So I thought, okay, well, I can throw a here's why in there and kind of put the two together. And because I'm a very weird person, one day I just said why, and I had an impulse to hit myself. I thought it'd be funny. So I said why, and I hit myself and here's why. And then I checked the comments, and all the comments were like, that guy just hit himself. Why did he hit himself? So I said, okay, well, next time I'm going to hit myself twice. So, I hit myself twice. And the comments like, why does he keep hitting himself? So it got to the point where I literally hit myself about 12 times, just everywhere, just like slapping it. And because people kept commenting on it and because people kept tweeting it at me, I was like, okay, well, this is just fuel. So I kept doing it. I kept doing it to the point now, it's just become my gimmick. So it was just a weird impulse. I don't know where it came from. Just something in my brain said, I think it's funny if you hit yourself. And I went, all right. So I hit myself and it worked. And I suppose that's the Chris Jericho thing. If you go out there and you see a bunch of signs with something you said last week, you're probably onto something, run it into the ground. And man, I'd run it into the ground. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah, but the thing about you running it into the ground is it works. So I mean, it's okay. And then I'm more than sure you've had like a fan or two like come up to you and be like, why? And then get creative and then hit themselves in different places. Here's why.
Yep. And they asked me to say it too. That's the dream. That's the dream. I love it.
Yeah, I feel like somebody will come up with a whole dance routine and then just be like, here's why.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious.
I'm all about it.
Yes. So what would you say the future holds for you, Simon?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm very blessed. Like I've said that a lot, but I do feel blessed. I've got a cool job. The YouTube thing is not work. Like it's hard sometimes, but it's not work. So long may that continue. Long may my wrestling continue. If I can do a few things in acting as well, just to spread my creative chops a bit further, that would rock too. But ultimately, I do have sort of long-term plans as we've mentioned, but I'm more of a short-term kind of a guy. Like today is Wednesday, I'm going to enjoy Wednesday. Then we get to Thursday, AEW, I'll enjoy this too, and we'll do some other things as well. But, if my wrestling can continue to improve, if the platform that I'm allowed to do it on can continue to grow, same with the YouTube stuff, if we keep having viewers and keep growing the channel, and as long as I can have all these cool experiences that keep coming up, like going to Thunder Rosa's promotion last year, going to Battle Club Pro this year, hopefully doing some stuff over WrestleMania, I'm a pretty happy guy. Again, I've got a roof over my head. I'm lucky to do what I do. And I think sometimes you've got to remember that. But if we can keep heading in the right direction and keep this momentum going, I'll be a happy guy.
Beautiful answer. Well, Simon Miller, so much for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And I'm so happy I was able to have you, in this capacity. So just tell everyone where they can find and follow you and what you've got going on.
Yep, at Simon Miller 316 on all social media platforms. That's the best way to find out because I'm always posting about stuff. You can find me on YouTube as well at WhatCulture Wrestling. I also have my own YouTube channel, Simon Miller, which is just my nonsense. But yeah, if you hit me up on all of those things, you will then find links to other things. So if anything does interest you, that's kind of like my central hub. But yeah, search for Simon Miller, search for WhatCulture, and eventually you will see my stupid face.
It is not a stupid face. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not a
All right.
stupid face, okay?
No, it's
You
not.
do that like the self-talk, okay? It's not a stupid face.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. All right. But know that you can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy, and support the Hardy Wrestling Podcast everywhere you find your shows. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel, and just listen to it and just continue to support the show. So, of course, from the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, I'm your girl Stephanie Hardy. And until next time, bye, y'all.